Child neglect poses a huge risk on a whole generation as it affects early brain development, leading to struggles in learning, behavior, and mental health. Water scarcity crisis in Africa is a problem that has cast a shadow on the well-being and productivity of many Africans today. Solar renewable clean energy made easier by big data. Loneliness and isolation among the elderly is said to accelerate aging faster than smoking. Hello, I hope you are doing great. The truth is our priority. We give justice to your curiosity. Welcome to the Eye Opener with me, Sharon Oseko, live from Daystar University Studio. I am with you for the next 30 minutes. Thank you for joining me. Thank you for staying with the Eye Opener. Please join the conversation with me on Twitter at @eye_opener and the hashtag #EyeOpener. Child neglect has been on the rise and has continued to be normalized in the society today. Many parents and caregivers fail to meet a child's basic needs. The 2010 Constitution of Kenya, in Article 53, recognizes the right for all children to be protected from abuse, neglect, forms of violence, inhuman treatment, punishment, and exploitative labor. Child neglect poses a huge risk on a whole generation. It affects the early brain development, which leads to struggles in learning, behavior, mental health, and more.
This is Wajibu Wetu Children's Home, a place where many children consider as a safe space. Many children are here due to the neglect they have encountered at home.
The most common neglect of child abuse and children who are brought to us is that many families have marital instability. As you are aware that there's a lot of poverty. More than 60% of our population live in slum areas. As we do field work, we identify some cases. Then we closely work with the children department to get committal orders and have the children reside in children's home institutions.
Since from primary nimechop nikamaliza, saa pe kuleta shida ni high school. Hiyo mambo ya fee kidogo, but nilikuwa na basari. So hii ndo ilifanya nisimalize shule, vitu kama hizo, na kukosa some more attention ya parents wangu wenye, yani tukuwa na time mob nao juu alikuwa anashinda kazi. Saa hiyo time ndo ilibidi nimekosa, nikapata na group baya hivyo. Ikabidi niache shule, but nilifika form 2.
Number 1, the child behaves with a drone in class. The child doesn't concentrate when you give out some work to do. The children who have special needs, the parents tend to leave these children. They don't want to associate with themselves. So when children come to school, they feel neglected, and as a teacher I can notice. I must give them counseling. You counsel the child so that you bring him or her back to class. Because when you are teaching and this child is passing through so many challenges, the child can't perform. So the child must be taken to guidance and counseling before you introduce that child to learning environment.
Most cases of child neglect are due to the factors such as poverty, violence at home, drug-addicted caregivers, unemployment, lack of social support for parents, parental history of child abuse during childhood, and a poor parenting skill.
Physical neglect is by far the most common type of neglect. In most cases, the parent or the caregiver is not providing the child with all the basic necessities like food, clothing, education, and shelter. In some cases, young children are left without proper supervision for extended periods of time. In studio today, I am joined by Mr. John Kangondu, a counseling psychologist and a transformational coach with Mind Care Africa and International Professional Counselors Center based in Thika. Welcome, sir. What is child neglect?
Child neglect is a form of abuse where you find that a parent or a caregiver has actually neglected to offer the basic needs to a child. It could be in terms of shelter, talk about the food, talk about the clothing, or even the emotional support that the children might require.
What signs and symptoms can help one identify a child that is facing neglect?
There are different ways that we can look around that, and you may find that a child who has gone through neglect can have a number of challenges, and especially when it comes to their performance in school. You may find that there's a slight decline or even a major one in terms of their performance. There could be also be some changes in terms of how they appear, how well they're groomed. There are some who are used to be tidy, and you may find that in the recent past there's some changes in how well they're groomed. Either they're dirty, they're not taken care of. There's also an element of physical abuse. You can find some bruises in this particular child, and that tells you that there's something amiss with this particular young person. There's also an element of anger outburst, where you find that the child who has been neglected, as a way of getting to communicate that all is not well, you find that they have challenges with how they manage their emotions, and especially anger outburst.
What is the long-term and short-term impact of child neglect on the mind and behavior of a victim?
When you talk about the long-term impact of child neglect, there are a number of ways to go about it, and one of the things, it would be their own psychological well-being. And a child who has been neglected, there's an element of feeling they're not loved, and in a way this may actually affect their emotional well-being, and eventually impact on their mental well-being. And you may find a child who has gone through neglect actually developing some mental health conditions, talk about depression, talk about anxiety, and this is where you find that they are unable to handle the challenges that come as a result of the neglect in a healthy way, and psychologically they are affected to a point whereby they slip so much into depression, and some we may lose them through suicide. The other thing, it would be, you may find them having challenges with attachment, and these are the children, once they grow up and they get into their adult life, say they are married, they have challenges with forming meaningful relationships. Most of them may actually find themselves having challenges when it comes to how well they relate with their significant other. And these are the people who seem to care less, and especially when they're interacting with their loved ones, and more so if they turn out to be parents. You may find that some of them, they don't have a way or how to take care of their kids, and you may find similar traits being passed on from one generation to the other. One who has gone through neglect, having challenges with how they get to take care of their children, and this in a way affects their children and the other generations that will come after them.
Thank you, Mr. John Kangondu, for your comprehensive insights. 1 in 3 African citizens is impacted by water scarcity. Citizens in sub-Saharan Africa travel an hour on average daily in search of water. Factors such as increase in population today increases the demand for water, while the supply of water has reduced due to factors such as climate change. Many people in sub-Saharan Africa are currently facing drought that has further led to food insecurity and increase in poverty.
The water scarcity situation has worsened in most countries in sub-Saharan Africa due to the rapid population growth, economic development, and urbanization. Climate change, a world crisis today, has caused failed rainfall seasons, resulting in water scarcity in Kenya.
In the last 4 seasons that we have had, starting from October, November, December season, that is the short rain season of 2020, the country has recorded below average rainfall. And that successive failure of the seasons, all the way right to the last season that we had, that's a March, April, May season of 2022, the successive failure of those 4 rainfall seasons is what has led to the current drought that is being experienced in the country.
Water scarcity is among the greatest problems facing Africa today. This is a problem affecting economic development, health, education, and the general well-being of human beings in sub-Saharan Africa.
Water scarcity is among the top priorities of the new government coming in Kenya today, as the government aims to improve the living standards of the Kenyan citizens. This is similar in many nations in Africa. Joining me today is Engineer Matinga from the Ministry of Water, Sanitation and Irrigation, in charge of water harvesting, storage and flood control. Thank you for joining me today. Water is defined as an essential resource to support the development activities in Vision 2030. What plans have been put in place to make this objective a reality by the year 2030?
Water is defined as an enabler in all sectors, in food production, manufacturing, healthy, and such. So that's why we say water is an enabler in development. Now the government has put in place comprehensive structures, legal reforms and laws to guide the provision of water. That is enhancing development and the management of water resources in the country, which are used for development to avail water both for manufacturing, industrial and domestic use.
What is the current vulnerability of Kenyan water resources, such as lakes, rivers and dams, caused by climate change?
Now, the effect of climate change is mainly seen in terms of depressed water availability, where Kenya has for some time depended on surface water, perennial rivers, and also water storage. Therefore, now, with the effect of climate, springs have dried up, water tables have gone low, flow in the perennial rivers has dwindled, and therefore that's why now the government has undertaken to do water harvesting and storage. That is harvesting flood waters and storing in dams. And that's why you heard the president clearly say that he is keen on developing 100 mega dams to store water, to make it available for domestic power generation and irrigation, so that we can have food security for the country.
What is the main reason causing the current water scarcity in Kenya?
Actually, with the effects of climate change, the rainfall has become erratic and unreliable, both spatially and the normal seasons have really changed. And therefore, the drought, like now we are reeling from 4 failed seasons. So the water storage structures that we had, the small ones have dried up. It has caused a concentration of livestock and human around the permanent water sources, and therefore it's really a stress that there is no pasture, there is no water storage, because some of the small sources have dried up. And therefore the government is now spending money in terms of drought intervention, and that is now vested in the Drought Management Authority, which is in place. Now with the growing population, the water available has been put under stress. If you look at 10 years ago, the population was much lower. Now it has grown, and to meet the expectations and demand of the current population, we need to have increased the water resources, and therefore that is why the government is undertaking steps to develop both underground groundwater and surface water by storing in harvesting flood waters and storing in dams.
What interventions and plans are being put in place to help Kenyans who are currently encountering water scarcity?
Now, the government is already developing a plan, a comprehensive plan. First of all, the Water Act 2016 reformed the way of doing business. Now we have the water regulations of 2021, water resource regulations, and the water harvesting and storage regulations of 2021, which now guide the regulatory framework for water harvesting and storage, and also management of water resources in Kenya. In that line now, the government has put in place, in engagement with the partners in public-private partnership, to develop 100 dams and furthermore for storing flood water so that it can be available for use by Kenyans. That's why we are trying to stabilize the availability of water in the country.
Let's take a short break, dear viewer, but when we'll be back, we'll talk about solar energy and big data for sustainable development.
Did you know that you can keep the doctor away by keeping fit? Regular physical fitness improves respiratory, cardiovascular health, and also reduces the risk of heart diseases. Lifting weights also reduces high blood pressure and onset of many diseases. Remember to hydrate as you keep fit. Reports from WHO indicate that 2.8 million people die annually from obesity, which is caused by overweight. Diseases can be prevented from by hitting the gym on a regular basis. Fitness can help improve your brain health and memory, which is your greatest asset. Incorporate fitness into your lifestyle to have a higher quality life. This PSA is brought to you by the Save for Life Association.
Welcome back, dear viewer. Thank you for staying with the Eye Opener. Big data and machine learning have already begun to revolutionize many aspects, including use of solar energy. Big data analytics can be used to detect underperformance and identify when inefficiencies that occur without someone on site. As the world, we are aiming to move to cheaper and renewable sources of energy so as to reduce emission of harmful gases which are contributing to climate change, which will lead to sustainable development. This translates to cheaper, environmental friendly, and more efficient power for both companies and consumers.
Big data for sustainable development is a concept that is concerned with meeting the needs of the present without compromising the resources of future generations. Solar energy is a form of renewable clean energy that, if adopted, will immensely reduce climate change. Data for sustainable energy has started to be implemented in many fields such as solar energy so as to reduce global warming and climate change.
Big data has a lot of impact on solar energy. For example, in some places we have large sunlight, in some places we have low intensity sunlight. So in that case, when we have a place like, let me just give an example, like a place like Ericho, which has lower sunlight, then you will use a different type of panel in that place. In other case, whereby we have an area like sites of Turkana, whereby the sun is of high intensity, we shall use another different type of solar panel. So in that case, this data will help us now to choose the right panels in that situation.
Forecasting technology and big data can help make adapting solar energy easier. Maintaining solar farms, sometimes with hundreds or even thousands of panels spread across large regions, can be a difficult, expensive, and sensitive process. Advances in monitoring have made checking on these plants much more efficient.
On the cost of solar installation and solar panels, the initial cost is somehow high, but after some years, when you will calculate the total cost, you will realize that the solar energy is cheaper, because it's just the initial cost, and then at the end of the day, you will not need any other cost, because the maintenance cost is somehow cheaper, and even it is so much efficient.
Please continue sending your views and opinions on Twitter at @i_opener and #IOpener. Joining us today in studio in a live discussion is Ms. Margaret Wambui Watiri, a renewable energy officer working at Go Solar as a solar technician. Welcome, madam. How is big data helpful for renewable energy?
Big data is helpful in various ways. As we can see, big data has already revolutionized like the transport industry, other industries, and in renewable energy, it has brought people to be able to estimate the amount of power that can be in a particular community. Like say, if it's most renewable energy sources are intermittent, we'll need to know where wind is more applicable, where solar is more applicable, and we can use big data for this. We can be able to say like at a particular area like in Mandera, the solar will be more efficient there than wind, and we can be able to tell the amount of solar that particular area can harness. Yeah.
How is big data analytics incorporated in solar energy to make regulations and maintenance of solar power much easier?
Okay, with big data, we have after solar installation, we have a solar monitor. With big data, we can be able to tell when a particular panel is not functioning, but this is mostly for big like mini grids or the C&I projects. We can be able to tell when a particular inverter is not functioning, and we can be able to go for maintenance, or probably use big data to be able to find out where the problem is, when the output is not as much as it's supposed to be.
How is big data analytics used to make solar energy more dependable?
We can use big data in solar. We can use it to know the sun source, the peak sun hours of a particular areas. We can be able to study a particular community and be able to know their energy demand. If it's like in solar, we can be able to see that their peak sun hours is 3 to 4 days. We can be able to calculate the energy demand, that how much energy they need. Probably it's a school. We can be able to know their power, as in their power demand, or if is the power demand higher in this particular area. We can be able to, with that data, we can be able to know which community needs solar more than the other. Like probably we say in Nairobi, most people have electricity, but in the rural areas, most people do not. So that can be used to know where we should take solar energy, or which particular community needs solar energy more than the other.
Please continue sending your views and opinions on Twitter at @I_opener and #IOpener. On other news, social isolation and loneliness are important but often neglected social determinants of health for the elderly. Social isolation and loneliness reduces the quality of life, shortens life expectancy, and damages mental and physical health.
Globally, the population aged 65 and over is growing faster than all other age groups. Social isolation and loneliness among older people is widespread, with some countries reporting that up to 1 in 3 older people feel lonely and isolated.
Any one of us is aware that we are all social beings. So if you're left alone, for instance, in a big house, your retirement house in the village, you find that you lose other functions. So you find there is accelerated poor mental and social health amongst the elders who are left lonely. And if, for instance, they are not able to access health facilities, because maybe they are left and maybe they are not able to walk or go to the health center. So you find if they have an issue, a medical issue, they will tend to stay longer with that medical condition without being attended to. So you find most of them, they will come in with complications because of these isolation. So by the time the family members they realize, it's sometimes a bit too late. So they suffer, and then they have to be rehabilitated for long. You find they have huge medical bills, which could have been of no stress to them if there was somewhere they would go where there is some social life, and they will access all these things that they need to keep them fit and healthy.
In many cases, most attention tends to be given to the financial well-being of the elderly, forgetting about their mental well-being. Social isolation and loneliness in people aged 65 and above tends to grow into depression if not dealt with, which in turn reduces their life quality and expectancy of the elderly members of the society.
Like now, you have come to visit us, isn't it? If the elders here have seen you, they have seen a new face, you have said Jambo, then they feel they have met someone new. But if they were in their own houses, they could not have the opportunity. So there is a level, a higher levels, more of interaction with the environment, with the people. There are so many activities. We have people who would come grooming, like we have the grooming days. They would come and do their hair, they would do their nails. There is the chaplaincy day, the pastors and those people who deal with the church would come, these things you cannot find them in your own house. So they would come to make, they would benefit more in interacting with the environment and also with the other people, the community as a whole. And also them themselves as a group of the most generally same age, you find they are able to talk, tell stories. Like we have storytelling projects whereby the elder would tell us a story about maybe how Mau Mau was, what was Mau Mau, what it was emergency time during various stages of achieving our independence as a country. So they will tell you stories. But if they were in their own houses, they would not find these projects. So you never realize their potentials. So generally, it exploits their potentials.
Human beings depend on interaction with others in order to survive and thrive. As many age, some of them are left either in rural areas or urban areas. This isolation leads to a sense of loneliness, which in turn leads to health problems such as cognitive decline, depression, or dementia. Dennis Mokaya reporting for the Eye Opener.
Human beings are social creatures. Our connection to others enables us to survive and thrive. Yet, as we age, many of us are often alone than when we were younger, leaving us more vulnerable to social isolation and loneliness-related health problems. Joining me live in studio today is Mr. John Kangondu, a counseling psychologist and a transformational coach with Mind Care Africa, an international professional counselors center based in Thika. According to WHO, World Health Organization, in many regions, 1 in 3 adults faces social isolation and loneliness. Among the elderly, what is the impact of social isolation and loneliness on the mind and behavior of the elderly?
We know very well that human beings are social beings, and in a space whereby one is isolated, and especially in a social way, this will have significant impact in their own general well-being. And like you know, when we do diagnose issues to do with mental health, one of the things that we look at it will be how they are socially. And for those who are so deep into a certain mental health condition, say talk about depression, they actually isolate themselves from their social circles. So that tells you if you are not in a space whereby you're interacting with your loved ones or your friends, this may significantly affect your own mental health well-being. And you may find that our elderly people who in most cases they are alone back in the village or even in their homes, they may develop some mental health conditions as a result of being socially isolated. So this means that our elderly people, our grandparents, our mothers, talk about our parents, they will be significantly be affected by the social isolation. And that tells you that they may develop concerns or challenges that we term as depression, talk about anxiety. Some may actually go so deep into depression that you may find that some of them actually losing their lives through what we may refer to as suicide. You may also find that they're equally affected in terms of even how they are in terms of their memory, and you may find some of them developing dementia as a result of being socially isolated. Why? Because we know that one of the best way to manage dementia or loss of memory is to be interacting with other people, and that's why it's very important for us to ensure that they are socially accommodated as much as yes they are of age, and you may feel that they are not of importance in our current day and age.
What ways can be employed to reduce social isolation among the elderly?
There are a number of ways that we can go around that. And one of the most important things, it would be enhancing awareness, and especially among family members or even the society at large. Why? Because it is important for us to know the importance of being close or even being around our elderly people. We may find that most of the people out there, they don't know the significance and the importance of having their elderly people around them and what this does to them. So by us getting to create awareness and talking about this concern, and especially in our society, it will come a long way in terms of managing and also improving on this particular issue. The other thing, it will be forming support groups. It's very important that our elderly people belong to a support group whereby they can be able to talk about the issues that they are facing, the challenges that they face on a day-to-day basis, and it's also very important for them to be included or even accommodated, say in a certain group, say in their religious practices. If it is a church, there could be some meetups for the elderly people. If it is in the mosque, if it is in the temple, where they can merge and feel that they are part and parcel of a certain group. So what I mean is that we as human beings, we have a need of belonging, and that's why it's very important for us to ensure that we do accommodate our elderly people in such a way that they feel that they belong to a certain group, and this will eventually enhance on their general well-being.
Social isolation and loneliness is often overlooked by many. What is the impact of social isolation and loneliness on the mental health of the elderly?
We say that, I had said earlier on that it's very important for human beings to interact with their loved ones, with those people that are close to them. And what we know is that human beings are social beings. So that tells you that if you are socially isolated, this will have a significant impact to your own general well-being and especially psychological well-being. So the impact can be so severe, and you may find our elderly people, and especially those who are close to us, if you're not accommodative and if you're not very supportive, they may tend to slip into depression as a result of feeling that they are not worthy, they are worthless, and in a way this turns out to be a very lonely space to be at. And when they feel neglected, you may find that some of them, they may also fall into some form of anxiety. They may develop anxiety because they are not sure of how tomorrow is going to be for them. You may find that most of them, they are quite uncertain, in terms of their basic needs. Talk about the food, or even if they'll be able to, meet their demands, and especially with the basic needs. And that's why you may find that some of them may be very anxious, and especially when they're not sure about how their tomorrow is going to be. You may also find that most of them, they don't have good quality life as a result of the social isolation. And this tells you that if there's no one to take care of themselves, to take care of them in terms of even like grooming, talk about keeping their houses neat and all that, they may lose the urge and the importance of being alive. And that tells you, in a way, this is going to affect their own psychological well-being. So with social isolation, and especially among the elderly, you may find that most of them, they have significant impacts and effects, and especially on their mental well-being. And that is very important for us to be very accommodative and support them in the best way possible.
Those were the top stories. We do not just secure freedom, we defend what people deserve. Thank you for staying with the Eye Opener. You can contact us through our Twitter page at eye_opener and #eyeopener to share your views and feedback. Have a lovely time.